Hi, I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is the Candice Malcolm Show. We have a great episode for you today. It was an explosive day in politics yesterday. We covered that meeting, that bilateral sit down between the Canadians and the Americans in the Oval Office with Trump and Carney. Went through that, but we're going to cover a bit more of the reaction. I want to start, though, by talking about this feud between Premier Danielle Smith in Alberta and Premier Doug Ford in Ontario. Before we get to that, though, I'm going to ask you to like this video. It really helps us with the YouTube algorithm. Okay, so the two premiers, the two quote unquote conservatives are changing a war of words. And I want to get into this a little. First, I'm going to introduce our guest today, who is Mario Zelaya. Mario is a political commentator and a businessman, a successful businessman. He has a huge, huge audience over on TikTok and many other social media channels. So, Mario, always great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Candice.
So I want to get into this sort of war of words here. As we saw after the election, after the federal election ended, sort of the knives came out. During the election, we saw, oddly, the progressive conservatives, Doug Ford, his chief of staff, Corey Tenike, unnecessarily inserting themselves in the election. And as soon as the vote was over, we saw Jamil Javani kind of jump in and smack him down and say, I'm sure, what they had been wanting to say for quite some time, which was basically just that we don't need advice from the Ontario provincial conservatives as to how to run the federal campaign. Well, this time, Doug Ford decided to take a swipe at Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and sort of boost Mark Carney. I think it's pretty openly clear that Doug Ford is just openly a liberal at this point. So let's play that clip.
All he's trying to do, and we wish him, I forget about political stripes, by the way. We have a prime minister down there, and he's going to be sitting down, and he's going to give it everything he can. This is a time to unite the country, not people saying, oh, I'm leaving the country, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You know, united we stand, divided we fall. And we have to be united Canada together to fight President Trump's terror.
It was sort of like an old school George Bush line, united we stand, divided we fall. So Danielle Smith sort of responded in kind yesterday, saying that she has a great relationship with Premier Ford. She did joke that they probably supported different people in the last election, kind of just taking a jab that he's, at this point, like I said, basically a federal liberal. And then she just said, I don't tell him how to run my province, so he shouldn't tell me how to run his. Let's play that clip.
Well, Doug and I have a great friendship. We don't agree on everything. In fact, I think we supported different people in the last federal election. And so we don't have to agree on everything. But what I will say is we have a constructive conversation at the coffee table. I continue to look forward to having a constructive conversation with him at the coffee table. But he's the Premier of Ontario. I'm the Premier of Alberta. We just have different issues that we have to respond to in our respective jurisdictions. I don't tell him how he should run his province, and I would hope that he doesn't tell me how I should run mine. But we have a very respectful relationship, and I hope that continues. As most Albertans know, I have repeatedly stated I do not support Alberta separating from Canada.
And she sort of reiterated there that she doesn't want to separate from Canada. She said it many times. Like, I know Premier Smith, she doesn't strike me as a separatist, never has. All she's doing is creating a democratic process to basically just acknowledge the fact that there is a large separatist movement in Alberta. So, Mario, what did you make of this back and forth here?
Well, I think the backlash towards, Ford, I think it started probably well before I think Jamil actually made public comments. And, I've seen it a lot on X. I've seen it on the social media platforms. A lot of, major, political influencers, people who cover the news, people like myself have been very vocal against Doug Ford and how he did not endorse nor help Pierre Poilievre. I think he specifically said that we're busy. My MPPs are busy. Sorry, can't help you. And then he started criticizing and doubling down, saying things like the truth hurts when his, I think, campaign manager basically accused Pierre Poilievre of, I think he called it political campaign negligence, so something along those lines. But it was grotesque for them to insert themselves in that way, and meanwhile sip on, basically lattes and have coffee with Krista Freeland and do a photo op with Mark Carney. I think we all saw for what it was. And I think Danielle's commentary of, we probably supported different people in the last, I think it's all true. I think it is all factually true. And if anyone watching can just go on X, look at anything Doug Ford posts, look at anything and read the comments. every single comment you will see on there has something to do with him being a traitor. And that has been vocalized quite actively, and I think it really exploded to be much more than what it used to be when Jamil brought it forward. And with the image that he put on where, he's dressed up as Hulk Hogan ripping his shirt open, and for those who haven't seen it, Doug Ford is wearing this shirt. It says Ontario Conservatives, but he's ripping it open, and then there's a liberal red shirt underneath, basically exposing the fact that he truly is a liberal. I mean, this is how we all feel. I think it's very accurate. I think it's very real. I think if you did any sort of approval rating for Doug Ford right now, and if there's any sort of polling, it would be so incredibly low. There's so many people and the consistent commentary that I've been seeing from people is, if he's in power for the next election, I will never vote for him. Like, and my approach is, we will never forget this.
I agree. I was part of what I was trying to figure out during the campaign was what was his motive, right? I wondered if maybe does he have ambitions to run federally, and so he was sort of pre-positioning his team and his henchmen to kind of, they smelt blood and to like go for the kill against Pierre Poilievre, try to sink him so he loses the election, so that Ford can be next in line for the leadership. But I think you're right. Like, I don't think that the conservative base and the the voting partisans in the party would ever forgive Doug Ford for what he's done. I don't know that his polling is low in Ontario because there isn't really much competition. Like, both the Liberals and the NDP in Ontario just can't seem to get their acts together. And both of them sort of always prioritize the federal party as opposed to the provincial party. They just don't have like a good candidate to step in either place, because both, talented people in Ontario that are part of the Liberal Party tend to go towards the feds at this point anyway. Maybe if Poilievre was the prime minister, things would change. But I did kind of wonder, like, what is the motive? Why? I actually, like, upon like thinking about it, I'm not sure that Doug Ford has aspirations to become prime minister. I think he just really likes to be involved. Like, he likes the attention. He likes to be in the center of things. He just wanted attention. And the fact that Pierre Poilievre was getting all the attention because of the federal campaign, he just, like, in some way felt left out and wanted to be involved. I don't think that there's anything deeper than that. But from an Ontario perspective, I know that people are deeply disappointed in the way that the government is run. Like, maybe we need to do more to pressure this government to actually be conservative. It's right there in the name of their party, but they don't seem to have conservative principles, especially when it comes to standing up for tradition, protecting children against sort of like the most excessive left-wing ideology that gets pushed in our school system, like the total collapse of our healthcare. Like, there just doesn't seem to be any competency there or any conservatism. What do you make of all that?
Well, I mean, I think it's true. I think his policies, I mean, even if you go back to the COVID days, like, if I were in his position, we have a shortage of nurses, we have a shortage of healthcare workers. I would have rehired all of the healthcare workers that lost their job because they refused to put something in their body.
Of course,
And
yeah.
I would have done it with back pay. That is unequivocally, like, that should have been done without question. He's had every opportunity to do that. He hasn't.
Hmm.
I have no idea what he's in for another 4 years. Do it now. Like, we're facing a crisis, and we're basically instead importing nurses that are not qualified, that have fake credentials from overseas, that go over to Buffalo to get trained on how to actually do IV injections because the diploma they have is fake. And I know this because I hear from people that tell me this. They know people that have done this. They have seen coworkers get fired because they weren't actually nurses. They had no idea what they were doing. They couldn't even do the basics. And so these are very real problems that I think are much larger than what we think. And so if we have that problem, why is it not being plugged? I would make sure that there would be criminal consequences associated with that. I would come down so hard to deter anything like that ever from happening. We're talking about people taking care of our parents, taking care of our children, of ourselves, and we're trusting a bunch of scam artists that decided to, pay $500 for a fake, nursing degree overseas to bring it over here and to take care of us. That's not taking care of us. You could actually kill us. And so, to me, he's not a conservative. I don't think he ever really has been. His policies, I mean, like, look at the things that he lines himself up with. He would much rather have alcohol sold in every single corner convenience store than to focus on expanding healthcare, than to fight for us and go to the federal government and say, you're letting too many people into this country. Like, the city of Brampton right now is the fastest growing city in all of Canada. We don't have enough hospitals for all these people. You need to stop. He's never said that, not once, not explicitly, not publicly, not ever. And so a true leader needs to stand behind the facts and the people of what's happening. It just shows that there's this massive disconnect, and he tiptoes around issues and never says things explicitly. He has no problem with corporate welfare and giving, the billions of dollars in incentives, tax breaks, and money to, these large multinational corporations to build EV plants, which were just decimated completely by the tariffs. And so, that they went all in on corporate welfare, but they left the regular working class citizen completely holding the bag.
I wish that was something that we all took away from the Trump tariff threats, is that it's probably not a good idea to have government prop up industry, because this is what Trump is
Yes.
talking about when he says that Canada is subsidized, that Canada is cheating, all this stuff. It's like he's pointing to something that is real, that exists. And it seems to be a philosophy sort of the liberals, but it does get picked up from time to time from conservatives, or at least they don't have the courage to eliminate it. But why is it in Canada that government needs to hand millions of dollars, sometimes tens of millions, sometimes even billions of dollars to private companies? It doesn't make sense. Like, even in the media space, which is one I'm familiar with, it's like we started Juno News from basically nothing. We've built it up into a successful business. We've only been around for a few months and it's already profitable, very profitable. Okay. So, like, why is it that some media go hat in hand to the government and get money? Like, it just doesn't make sense. When there is a free market business plan that makes sense, then you don't need the government involved. And yet the government just loves to be involved, and they want to be involved. They want to prop up these industries. They created essentially an artificial film industry by just creating tax credits and bribing these film industry movie companies to come up to Vancouver and Toronto to film the movies here. The companies did it because they were getting paid to by the Canadian government. And Trump just wakes up one day and says, enough, we're going to tariff it, and it's going to be devastating. So this whole idea that it's the government's job to prop up businesses and industries and create entire sectors of the economy is not sustainable. It's not, like, we can't afford it, first of all. And second of all, it's like all that has to happen is the Americans decide, like, hey, you can't do that, that's cheating. And then the entire thing goes away, and it will be, I'm sorry to see it. Like, I feel bad for everyone who works in the film industry, because it won't be nice, it won't be pretty. But the reality is that the government, Canadian government and liberal governments and progressive conservatives like Doug Ford, they're the reason why these industries are so unstable.
Yes, and I would say that there's also this mass disparity between the billions of dollars that get deployed into different sectors. And I'll give you a perfect example. I believe between Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford, it was something to the tune of 14-ish billion dollars that was given. I think it was to Volkswagen. And I think the totality of jobs that were going to be created was 2,000. And so the ROI that we would get from this is what? And that's what I don't understand. And on the film industry side, the incentives aren't in the tens of billions of dollars, but it created, I think the international portion of the jobs that get created was something like 138,000 jobs or something like that. That's what's at risk right now because it's been propped up. What people, may not realize is there's something called shred credits. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called, it's SRED. And these shred credits are, it's basically almost like an innovation fund. And it existed when I used to be back in the tech world over a decade ago. They've expanded them, and I'm gonna leave certain companies anonymous, but I know Canadians who do not live in Canada. They live in the US. They have their headquarters in Canada. They take advantage of the credit system. Their costs are in Canada, but their profits are in the US. And so what
Mhm.
they do is that it's a form of transfer pricing. And so
Yeah.
what you do is you make the US dollars, you have the costs in the US, you have enough of those, sorry, you have the costs in Canada, but what the government does, they pay nearly half of the salaries if you're doing something innovative. And innovation is, by the way Shred defines it, I honestly believe it's very subjective, and it's something that you could very easily sell. So as soon as you say, "Oh, we're leveraging AI in video, or in the way we're doing, video channels and video feeds." Well, no, what there's their whole business model. They are getting top-notch engineers from Canada, taking advantage of our tax dollars, using us as a cost basis, taking those credits and exporting those profits to the US.
Well, and just even to add on to that, I'll just speak briefly on this because my husband started a tech company in Waterloo about a decade ago as well. And one of the things when they were trying to raise money was that all the VCs, so the investors, the venture capitalists, were all like, you have to sign up for these government subsidies. And it's
Yes.
like any self respecting entrepreneur who's trying to build a big business and has a vision for the future doesn't want to be spending like half their work week filling out government welfare forms. Like it's so the entire process itself is humiliating. It's like you're taking an engineer and rather than getting them to code and do something innovative and do something exciting, you're saying go apply for your government welfare check. And these guys would have to spend like every Friday doing this stuff. And it's like no wonder Canada can't innovate. No wonder innovative and entrepreneurial Canadians move out of Canada and move to like the Silicon Valley because the entire system joke. Okay, I want to move on, just sort of talking about Trump and tariffs with a bit more of the backlash. So, like I said, we covered this in great detail on the show yesterday, but there's a bit more kind of bubbling out that I wanted to go back and cover. So, yes, Mark Carney was in Washington, D.C., had that bilateral meeting with Trump. I did not think it went well. I thought it was like Donald Trump did like a master class, like art of the deal, subtle, low level, embarrassing Carney, taking jabs at him and getting essentially exactly what he wants and showing who's in control and who's the boss. I'll just show a few clips. So first of all, here is Mark Carney being greeted by Donald Trump. And just optically, like, anti-vaxxer pointing this out on X, Mark Carney, terrible posture, slouched shoulders, jello wrists, just awful. Let's play that clip. So more just body language here. This is another post on X from Beheezy Tweets saying this is the very moment Mark Carney realized he lost everything. Just look at his body language after hearing Trump's firm response. Like, you don't even have to hear the sound here, but you can just see Mark Carney. And this was kind of the theme, Mario, throughout the entire meeting yesterday, is it was just kind of awkward for Mark Carney, right? Because Donald Trump is so in control. He's such a he's so outspoken, he's so loud, he's so confident, he's the president of the United States, it's his home territory, it's his office. And Carney just kind of looked like he was just caught off guard. He was out of his depth. He was trying to interject. He knew he had to say something because Trump just kept insulting him, like, and it kind of like big smile on his face, like low level insults, but like saying that Canada shouldn't be its own country, saying that he didn't like Carney's predecessor, Justin Trudeau or Chrystia Freeland, talking about how Canada cheats on trade and that they were still going to go through with like the tariffs, like all this stuff. And you could see Mark Carney trying to interject, but like he wasn't quite able to. I just didn't think it looked good. I don't know why he agreed to this kind of a meeting in the first place. What was your like total overall takeaway from the meeting yesterday?
I think it was a "I told you so" moment for all liberal voters. And I think it basically showed that Mark Carney wasn't going to be going elbows up. He wasn't the person to be aggressive. He wasn't the person that's going to change anything with the tariffs. Donald Trump had already made his mind. I truly believe Mark Carney knew this. And I think he knew that because he could have had that same meeting a month ago. People forget he won the leadership bid. He was our prime minister before the election actually happened. He took over for Trudeau, and instead he jumped on a plane and went to Europe. He did that strategically because he knew if he had that same meeting, it would send the signal to all of Canada, wow, he's not the guy. He's not the guy. He didn't stand up to Donald Trump. He didn't say anything. He hasn't negotiated anything directly with him. And now that he's in power, he knows this. And that there's nothing he can really do. And I think Canadians got duped. I really do. I think they got duped because this is supposed to be our elbows up guy. He's supposed to go in there aggressive. He's got his PhD. Like this is like the most amazing thing in the world. He knows the economy. He knows economics. He's going to get back at he didn't. He
Well,
won't.
it's funny. I saw someone put this out on X. I can't remember who it was, so I don't have the specific example, but it was something along the lines of, liberals are very happy right now. They liked the fact that Carney went soft and sort of like tried to appease Trump. Like for some reason that made liberals happy, whereas it made conservatives very angry because they feel like he lied basically about who he was, and now he's getting away with it. And I wouldn't say that I was angry by his performance, but I do agree with you that liberals got duped. Carney was supposed to go in and like you said, be the economics professor and school Trump and like somehow show him that he's wrong. And that's not what happened at all. I don't know that he kissed the ring, but he kind of did, right? He said, Trump, you're a transformational president. And then he hit all the points that Trump had been talking about throughout the campaign. You're right, immigration, border, Arctic security. Like he basically is saying that Canada's going to concede to everything, which we at Juno News reported this, right? Like we know that Ian Bremmer, head of Eurasia Group, said that Carney will quietly fold after the campaign. That's exactly what happened. You posted this on X, and I want to play this clip because it's a longer clip, but it perfectly shows exactly what Mark Carney has done. It exposes him. This was posted by our friend Jasmine Lane. She writes, Mark Carney got crushed by Trump today and Canadians are paying the price. He successfully pulled the wool over our eyes. Don't believe me, just watch this compilation. So let's play that clip, please.
I don't think we can change Donald Trump. I don't think so. Not at this stage.
Get you to lift tariffs on Canada?
No.
Why not?
Just the way it is.
And a person who draws his inspiration from President Trump, like Pierre Poilievre, will kneel down before him.
You're a transformational president, focus on the economy with a relentless focus on the American worker, securing your borders, ending the scourge of fentanyl and other opioids, and securing the world.
Before he stands up to him. He's in sync with President Trump.
I thought you were excellent, and I think we have a lot of things in common.
Pierre Poilievre is also choosing to be willfully blind to the many and growing threats that face our country.
We don't really want cars from Canada. And we put tariffs on cars from Canada, and at a certain point, it won't make economic sense for Canada to build those cars. And we don't want steel from Canada because we're making our own steel, and we're having massive steel plants being built right now as we speak. We really don't want Canadian steel, and we don't want Canadian aluminum and various other things.
So, I mean, you can't make it any clearer than that. Obviously, liberals got duped. Obviously, Mark Carney is doing something totally different than what he was saying on the campaign. I guess my question for you, Mario, is does it matter? Like, do liberals care? Do Canadians care?
No, because I honestly believe that they are spinning this to be like he won. Did you see how he said, never, 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 for the 51st? Like they're trying to spin it in the most positive light. And it's not just them, it's the mainstream media as well. Like you look up anything related to the meeting went perfect. And so for the average person who maybe hasn't seen these clips and maybe won't, they will, see the news headline on social media, or they'll just quickly, see a glance of it in the news. You think the meeting went well. This is our guy. But when you actually look at his body language. He could tell he disagreed with Trump, and he's just kind of biting his, like, it's almost like he's biting his tongue, and he wanted to say, but he couldn't interrupt. And I mean, he did not stand up for Canada. He didn't stand up for himself. He did not clarify the fact that, Mr. Trump, or President Trump, we should clarify the fact that, you want our oil. You've asked for Keystone XL to be rebuilt. We would love to work that deal in with you. But when you factor in the oil, and if you remove the oil that you desire from us, we're technically then subsidizing you. Mm-hmm. Like you actually have a surplus with Canada. The only reason, there's this subsidy of $200 billion, it's because of the oil, because of what they export from us. And the first person that made that clear in Canada was actually Danielle Smith when she went down to Mar-a-Lago and she presented that to Trump. And so I think that is part of what helped in what you said in reducing the tariff from 25% to 10% on oil instead.
Well, it was 25 to 10. And yeah, I covered this in my show yesterday because the CBC tried to do this ridiculous hit piece against Danielle Smith, outraged that she spent $10,000 on flights, which just to point it out, like to fly from Edmonton, Alberta to Palm Beach, Florida, that is basically as far as you can fly across North America. Yes. The fact that she had 4 people, right? At first I thought it was just 2 staffers and then another business person, but there were 4 of them that went and they only spent $10,000. I mean, that I wish the CBC would kind of try to dig into how much Trudeau would spend on these delegations and these soirees that he would have. $10,000 is incredibly economical. It made me respect Premier Smith even more. I think you pointed out to me that she stayed at a Marriott hotel. Like, she's not living large on the taxpayer dime, but CBC is trying to make it seem scandalous that she went and had a diplomatic meeting with the most powerful and important person in the world. So, Mario, I appreciate your time. We're going to have you back for the second segment after the break here, and we're going to get into a whole bunch more. So, folks, stick around. We will be back. The Candice Malcolm Show. Thank you, and God bless.